Welcome to the Retirement Guy Podcast with Gary Alden from the Kingwood Investment Group. In this podcast, we educate people in or near retirement so they can make informed decisions and bridge the confidence gap. Learn how to mitigate risk in retirement so you don't run out of money before you run out of you. Join Gary Alden and explore strategies on how to live a stress-free retirement.
Hello and welcome to the Retirement Guy with Gary Alden from Kingwood Investment Group. Today, we're talking about cybersecurity. Hello, Gary. How are you?
Just fine, Eric.
All right. It's cybersecurity. This is a timely topic. This is something that's been in the news a lot, and many, well, I guess every company needs to be aware of. Why are we talking about it on this podcast?
Well, I think we're talking about it on this podcast because it almost seems like daily, weekly, you read something in a newspaper about a company being affected, which can then affect you. Mm-hmm. Or I get it from my individual clients. They tell me stories about, being hacked and then the need for cybersecurity. And by the way, we do have a trivia question today.
Oh, okay, yes.
And I want to mention that before we get going too much further. But the trivia question is, in Chicago, there's a very, very famous radio station. And the call letters on that radio station is WLS, like William, Larry, Sam. Do you know why it's called WLS?
I have no idea, honestly.
Well, we'll tell you at the end of the broadcast.
Okay. All right. You always make me wait, which is fine. I'll wait with the rest of the audience. Yeah, WLS. I always thought they were 4 letters, too, like WKRP in Cincinnati.
There you go.
Maybe not. Okay.
And there's another trivia question. When they first set up radio stations in the United States, all radio stations west of the Mississippi River started with a K, and all radio stations east of the Mississippi started with the letter W. But then they had some stations that kind of crossed the line. So every once in a while you'll find an outlier. But if you see something starts with a W, probably east of the Mississippi, and West Mississippi radio and TV stations start with the letter K.
All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
So,
all right.
More useless information, but anyway, it's
well, that'll keep us thinking for a while. All right. So, cybersecurity. What are we talking about today? I mean, that's a huge topic. So, where do we start?
Huge topic, and really, what we want to talk about today is maybe how to fight this enemy who is out there and maybe win the battle. So probably everybody listening on this call or this podcast today has probably had their information exposed, their private information, because if you just look at just different data breaches we've had in the last few years, Marriott Hotel, they had a database of over 500 million guests that have stayed at Marriott hotels around the world. That data was breached. Equifax, who is, they're huge operation, and they had a data breach of over 143 million Americans then in the data breach. But the biggest one that's ever happened so far is Yahoo. And Yahoo had over 3 billion, that's billion with a B, accounts that were compromised at Yahoo. So chances are, virtually everybody on this, I know I have, Yahoo account, and I stay at Marriott Hotel, so my information has probably been exposed to hackers, as well as probably everybody on this podcast.
So there's the bad news. Where's some good news, Gary?
There you go. So, and these data breaches happen all the time. You read about them in the newspaper, and then there's a lot of data breaches you never hear about. Mm-hmm. So, and there's stuff happening all the time. Even as, we're sitting here today recording this podcast, chances are there are cyber attacks going on right now when there's hackers out there pounding at the walls of different security networks around the world. And our job is to protect ourselves. We can't depend on the government or anybody else. We've got to take our own action to protect ourselves, and that's what we're going to be talking about today.
All right.
And then by the way, I do want to mention one thing. This happened to one of my clients a couple of years ago. His personal information was stolen, and it was used. They then used his information. Literally, This person checked in a hospital, got an operation that cost several $100,000, and guess what he got in the mail? Bills from the hospital and the doctor and the anesthesiologist and everybody else saying, hey, you owe us money because we did an operation on you. And he went, no, you didn't. Not on me.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. I think that would be a little bit easier to prove. Like, I don't have a scar. I'm not the same person.
Yeah, this wasn't me. You operated on somebody else. But, think about that. They're stealing, data so you can go to the hospital and have an operation. So, where there's most of this stuff you can't even make up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But by the way, I've got I know at least 2 books on cybersecurity, maybe more than that. But one of them, and I believe the title of the book is Cybersecurity and Cyber War. And I want to say that was the title of the book, Cybersecurity and Cyber War. And in there, in the book, and why we're talking about cybersecurity today, is that in the book, they talk about this as it's a growing problem. It gets worse and worse and worse every single day. But as we go through some positive actions you can take on your part, hopefully there is some light at the end of the tunnel so you can avoid the pitfalls. And we don't have time to go through it on the podcast today, but if anybody listening wants this cybersecurity quiz, it's 10 questions to ask yourself. You get 5 points for every correct answer. Remember, there's 10 questions. Mm-hmm. So if you can score at least 40 or better on this, hey, you're probably in pretty good shape. Most people score 5 or 10.
Oh,
you only get 1 or 2 questions right. There's a lot of people. I've shown this to some of my clients when we come in and do annual reviews, and a lot of people say, I can't answer one of these in the affirmative, which means they are just an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, that's on your website?
I'm sorry?
Is that on your website?
No, it's not. But if you just call the office, we'll be happy. That's actually one thing we could put on the website pretty easy. But just call the office. We've got copies printed out that we'd be happy to give anybody.
Great. All right.
So, Eric, key idea number 1 is adopting a new level of secrecy that can help you boost your security and cyber confidence.
All right.
And a friend of mine told me about this, made perfect sense, and then I've read it in a couple of books and publications. And that is, have a separate email for your financial accounts.
Okay.
And I have done that because I have both personal financial accounts, as most people do, plus I have my business accounts.
Yep.
And it's a way of keeping it separate, because any good hacker will tell you, if they have your email address, they own you. So think about all the places over the years you have given your email address. Your doctor's got it. Your dentist got it. Everything you do in life, somebody wants your email address. So it's out there. It's on the internet. It's every place you've ever visited and done business with. They got your email address. But set up an email address for all of your banking records to get alerts from the banks, etc., that nobody else knows. See, in fact, at my house, only 2 people know it, or me and my wife.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So just darn good idea. And so you're the only people that owns that. That means once you get all this set up, you've added another layer of security, and also make it secret. And maybe if you're, maybe besides you and your spouse, maybe an adult child or somebody knows it in case of an emergency. So again, think about it. You don't really care maybe if somebody, hacks into your Food Network account or your Yelp account. But again, once they have this hacker, they have your email address, they start working backwards to hack into all of your other accounts.
Yep, that makes sense.
This is a key step in boosting your security.
All right.
One of the other things, my son Christopher beats me up on this all the time because he is a very, very good expert on technology, and that is your passwords. Too many people have weak passwords. You've read about it, but I'll give you a perfect example. Literally within the last 30 days, a client comes into my office, and we're updating his financial records, and I ask him, hey, what's currently the balance in your 401k plan? And he wasn't even sure. So he said, hey, can I just borrow your laptop there and I'll log in and look at my account and see what my 401k plan's worth? And I said, sure, here's my laptop. He sat there and typed in his last name and then the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And that was his password. That would take a professional hacker maybe a minute and a half to figure out.
Yeah.
Now, he got his 401k plan balanced, but it was his last name and then 1, 2, 3, 4, because I saw him hit 1, 2, 3, 4 on the laptop. And then we had a little discussion maybe about password protection.
Just a little bit more. Yeah.
So, many passwords, they're child's play for a professional hacker.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, make your password hard for people to recognize. One of my clients, she changes her password periodically, and she links it to prayers that she knows. So she'll have a prayer, and instead of typing in all the words of the prayer as, say, your password, she just types in the first letter of, say, the first 10 or 12 words of the password, and then she adds numbers and characters, on the back side of it or maybe on the front side of it. And then she also changes that. She told me probably every other month she changes her password to a new prayer or, not necessarily a prayer. It could be a phrase. Maybe it's the first 10 words of a song that you like. Mm-hmm. But it's an easy way to remember the password if you know, hey, the first 10 words of one of your favorite songs.
Yep.
Or the first 10 words of prayer. Or the first 10 words of maybe a poem that you've memorized. I think you get the idea. But something that can make your password longer. And the longer it is and more letters and numbers and things you put in, the harder it is to be compromised.
Exactly.
So I have actually done that. I've got a couple of little songs, that grew up with, easy to remember. And I just got to remember, hey, this month, what song am I doing? And do the password accordingly.
Yep. I do something very similar. It's just usually I make up a sentence that I'll remember. And it's usually kind of specific about that network or about whatever the password is for. But like our Wi-Fi at home, I just made up a sentence and then changed one of the words in the sentence was 4. So that obviously became the number 4 instead, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it makes it so easy to make up passwords and remembering them much, much easier.
Yeah. And, just like today, I logged into one of the companies, a financial services company we work with, and they do a 2-step verification. In other words, I log in, enter my password, but then the website, it's all automated. They call my office number. They give me a 5 or 6 digit number, and then I have to type that on the website before I can get in. And you can actually do that yourself on your own email and financial accounts, and there are a couple of free apps you can get out there. They're called authenticator apps, and Google has one. It's called Google Authenticator. Also, Microsoft has one called Microsoft Authenticator. And I'm sure there's more out there, but you can set up so just your normal stuff that you use every day to log into is a 2-step process, which means if hackers even really did maybe get your password, then they run into the roadblock of the second step of them calling your phone to give you, and there's no way they're going to call the hacker's phone to give a code to. So that is just a super, super thing to do. Set up a 2-step verification, and you can do that yourself. And like I said, there's apps to do that.
All right.
And then one of my favorite things, because I do travel multiple times per year on airplanes, and you got to go out of town to go to meetings and things. And every time I go into an airport and they say, "Hey, we got free Wi-Fi," I would not touch free Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, with a 10-foot pole. There's too many hackers out there that will take advantage of that. Now, there's a difference between public Wi-Fi and a secure Wi-Fi, but if you're in a public space like an airport or someplace, you definitely want to avoid making any financial transactions. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't even check your email. Maybe if you just want to log on and play a game on public, Wi-Fi, maybe. But probably the better solution on that is to take your smartphone and make it a hotspot. So when you do that, you'll be using your data, which provides a private connection rather than doing a public Wi-Fi network. So again, I would really don't use public Wi-Fi. Make sure you are using a secure Wi-Fi, and you'll normally see the little padlock, little symbol up there if it is a secure Wi-Fi. So really watch that. And kind of dovetailing into that is your Wi-Fi network that you have at your house. So I think I'm a typical homeowner. I've got a Wi-Fi set up in my house and the router and all that stuff. And I know, again, when the last time we got a new one, my son Christopher came over and set everything up. So when you have your home Wi-Fi network, it lets you use, it opens doors, lets you and your family, not have to be connected with wires and all the good stuff out there. Mm-hmm. But there's 4 things that you really ought to do to lock down your router and your Wi-Fi network and keep it safe from hackers. And I get all this from my son, so I have to give credit here. And he tells me first you need to change the default username and password. Now, luckily, my son does all this for me, so I'm not sure how to do all this stuff. Because hackers know that if you can break into your network, they can get all your data. So again, on your router, you want to have a strong password on that router, like we've already talked about. Mm-hmm. Also, encrypt your router. Be sure you want to select a strong encryption setting for your router. So again, if you can't do this yourself, like here in my office, I've got a gentleman who's come out. He's a cyber expert, lives here in Kingwood, and he has come to my house before. He's come to the office several times if we have issues. So if you think this is kind of above your pay grade, you're not sure how to do this, hey, pay a guy to come out. He can probably do all this in an hour or less, so it's not going to cost you a lot of money. So if you can't do it yourself, hey, hire a professional, have him come out. The other thing is, Christopher told me, he says you want to disable Wi-Fi protected setup, which I'm not even sure what all that means. But this feature allows others to quickly connect to your network with a short password rather than having to type a whole password. But it can lead to strangers gaining access. So if you don't have the option to fully disable this feature, you may want to see if you can limit the number of attempts a person can maybe log into by, changing the settings. And then the last thing, and we just got through doing this again at my house, update your router firmware. Firmware is another way of saying for software. Mm-hmm. And the majority of routers come with outdated software because it's been sitting on a shelf for a long time. So when you get that new router, you want to log in and download the latest version of the software. Yep. And I know we do this periodically. We have a Wi-Fi router in my office. We don't really use it on a daily basis. We really have it as a backup or an emergency if our regular system goes down. But periodically, I think we have it set up to go in there and every 90 days log in and check for updates on the software.
Yeah, that's very important. And along with this Wi-Fi and the home network, while we're still on this subject, a lot of folks have security cameras, right? Some of them are nanny cams. Some of them are regular security cameras. And most of them nowadays have a microphone and speaker system so that you can talk to somebody in that room, or you can, if it's on the front porch, you can talk to somebody there. And I've seen a video where a gentleman hacked into somebody's, it was a nanny cam in their house, and just started talking to them, telling them, hey, I just wanted to let you know your network's not secure. I was able to get in very easily. And he was like 7 or 8 states away. But it's a very scary thing because when they have microphones on them, they hear everything you say, right? So if you're just having discussions about your finances, sitting around the table with you and your wife, they can hear that stuff if you're not securing your Wi-Fi and getting all those things in place. So it's not just them getting into the back end of your computer, it's them watching you and listening to you, which is a little scary.
There you go. You're exactly right. That would get your attention if you're sitting around and then a voice comes in, says, hey, by the way, I'm hearing every word you're saying, and I live in New Jersey.
Yep. He was a nice guy. He said, here's how you protect yourself, but still, that would freak somebody out. At least me.
Yep. And by the way, the next thing we're going to talk about, I have to thank Mark Brown, my longtime business partner. He told me about this one day, that he had set all this stuff up, and now have my credit card, debit card, personal, and also my credit card and debit card for my business here. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Every time you charge something, the bank knows almost instantaneously that you've just charged something to your credit card, mm-hmm. or you've done something, you bought something with your debit card. So if the banks know instantly when you make a charge, why shouldn't you? And Mark came down and told me, he says, "Hey, Gary," because our business accounts are at Chase, and he says, "Hey, we can get notified by Chase virtually instantly anytime there's a charge on our debit card or credit card for the company."
Yeah.
I went, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, you sign up for it, and there's no charge, but you have to take the action to sign up for it." Mm-hmm. So I've done that for both my business and personal. So literally, it'll pop up on my screen. If I see on the screen, hey, there's a $7 charge at McDonald's, I know either my wife just went over McDonald's and bought something, or somebody just stole my credit card number and just got a free hamburger on me. Mm. So, but that's kind of, anyway, that's when I get home every day. If something big has gone through there, I'll ask Linda, I says, "Hey, what'd you buy for, $586 today?"
Yeah.
So anyway, so it's a nice thing to set up. And again, most banks, there's no charge for it, but you have to proactively get it set up.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the flip side about that, and again, I think a lot of people have heard about this, is you freeze your credit cards from having somebody open new accounts. Mm-hmm. So you can go to the three major, credit companies out there. There's Experian and a couple of more out there. And you tell those companies there be no new credit established on my credit card. And if somebody does try to establish credit against one of my, somebody's trying to open a new account at some store, Home Depot, Best Buy or mm-hmm. someplace, you are notified that somebody just tried to open an account using your credit card number. Yeah. So as of September 21st of last year in 2018, credit freezes are now free in every state thanks to new federal law. Because before that, depending on what state you lived in, the cost could vary, and it could cost up to $10 per action. But now, according to federal law, you can go to the credit reporting agencies, set up set up freezes on your account, so somebody doesn't go out there, open an account in your name, unbeknownst to you, and start buying stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Very, very important. And then I read this story. I can't remember where I read it, but a lot of, the hackers know that, say, you, Eric, or me have done these credit freezes. But what we haven't thought about is setting up a credit freeze, say, on one of your children, Eric.
Oh, yeah.
Because what the hackers are doing out there now, and the national average is around 500 children per year suffer from identity theft. And you could say, well, why? They're not even real consumers yet. But think about their credit records are clean. Mm-hmm. And so they're attractive to thieves looking to open new accounts without any issues. And then the theft's probably going to go unnoticed, maybe even for years. As parents and grandparents, we don't bother to check the kids' credit reports. We check our own. But childhood identity theft is a growing problem, and it could lead to a lifetime of fraud. And then also, when the child does go to apply for real credit under their name, they find out that their credit is ruined by some crook. And they may not even know it's even happened for years into, their financial life.
Yep, absolutely. It's so strange how that can happen, and not just hackers, but even companies get things wrong. It was at least 10 years ago, Gary, we received a piece of mail in our mailbox that was addressed to my dog. His name was Zeke at the time, big black lab, beautiful dog. But it was a credit card offer for Zeke.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, really? And we got a laugh out of it, but I was like, how did they even it's not like we register him a whole lot of places, but somebody had gotten his first name and our last name and said Zeke Johnson. Oh, he needs a Capital One card, I think is what the company was. And they sent it to us. I'm like, no. So,
and for all you know, Zeke may have a Capital One credit card out there.
He absolutely could. I don't know how they do it without a social, but it was there. So,
there you go.
All right.
And by the way, this is one, and we pretty well have all my software for this, but again, Christopher, my son, when he moved back to Houston, started working with me here at Kingwood Investment Group several years ago. He is a nut about cybersecurity, updating your software. And one of the first things he did, he went into my computer and he updated all the new software updates from Microsoft. And I literally had several years of updates to my software. And that's opening up, the software companies are always going in there and fixing bugs and closing security loopholes and all that stuff. Well, if I'm 3 years behind, that's just 3 years of extra, window that hackers then could get into my computer because I haven't updated the fixes from Microsoft or whoever it happens to be. But again, he has now my computer on Microsoft set up to do automatic updates. And we have every computer in my office set up to do automatic updates. Same way at my home computer, we have it set up for automatic updates. But a lot of people literally have not done that. Yeah. So the national average is about 40% of people do not have their computer set up for automatic updates, and they don't update their software in a timely fashion. So that's just 40% of the population that is just opening themselves up to potential fraud and abuse.
Yeah. Yep.
All you're doing is making it easier on the bad guys. One thing I do just want to mention, and you and I talked about it before we started recording today, is you always want to back up your files. We back up all of our files, literally all of our files are backed up almost instantaneously through the day, and we put them up in the cloud. So a couple of reasons. Hey, if the building burned down, we still have all of our files. But also, we wouldn't want to literally open my computer one day, and then all of a sudden I'm getting this message, and it says, we have your computer locked and loaded, and we want $5,000, in other words, ransomware, so you can get into your computer and all this stuff. And I immediately call in a panic, I call my little security expert. He logged into my computer, and literally within a couple of minutes, he says, "You're fine." He said, "This guy was an amateur. Yeah, he was trying to hack in your computer, but I got him out. You're okay. You don't." And this guy wanted $5,000 in Bitcoin.
Of course. Yep.
And then I'm sure a lot of people listening have read about the issue in the city of Baltimore. And again, I'm not sure how this has turned out, but the city of Baltimore, they were hacked into, all of their files, everything were frozen, and these hackers wanted several $100,000 from the city of Baltimore to unfreeze all this, and the city of Baltimore said, no, we're not paying you any money. But that also means the city of Baltimore has got to pay a lot of people to fix things. But of course, they should have set up everything so they did never run across the instance of having to pay ransomware, which means they probably had some poor defense systems. They had crappy cybersecurity on the city systems. So, it could happen to my office here. It could happen at home. So we have made sure here, hopefully, sit here and knock wood, that we are hopefully well defended.
Yeah. Definitely.
So we could go on and talk about cybersecurity, Eric. I have a workshop that I've done periodically, and the workshop goes for about an hour and a half because we really dive into the topics we've discussed today into more detail. But I urge everybody out there to take some positive action. And one book that I will mention to you, and I didn't write this book, I don't get royalties or anything, but this is a book. It's called Hack Proof Your Life Now. Hack Proof Your Life Now, and it's by a gentleman by the name of Sean Bailey, and Sean is S-E-A-N, and Bailey, B-A-I-L-E-Y, and then he has a co-author, and I'm not sure I pronounced the last name, but it's Devin, D-E-V-I-N, and the last name is K-R-O-P-P, so I'm guessing that's Crop, pronounced Crop. So Sean Bailey and Devin Crop and it's Hack Proof Your Investment Life. And I read this I think 2 years ago, and implemented several of the things in there. And then some of the things in there, you read these stories and you go, really?
Wow.
And then some of the stuff you go, no way, that didn't really happen. But, there's some bad stuff happening out there, and a lot of it's never publicized.
Mm-hmm.
But just real great book, and find some book. I'm sure there are dozens, if not hundreds, of different books on protecting yourself out there. So Hack Proof Your Life Now, and by Sean Bailey and Devin Kropp could be one good resource for you.
Yeah, like you said, just take action. Do something.
Yeah, do something.
Yeah, do something.
That's what my old boss out of Boston, Denver, Colorado, and he says, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but go do something, and we'll see how it works out.
There you go. And now you've got to do something. You've got to give me the answer to that trivia question.
Oh, yeah. WLS, big radio station, kind of the early days of radio in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the first radio stations in the United States to be authorized by the federal government to broadcast with a higher power than a normal radio station, so it could cover more of the United States.
Gotcha.
But the radio station was owned by Sears, Roebuck and Company, which was headquartered in Chicago. And when they came up with their call letters, WLS stood for World's Largest Store. Because Sears Roebuck had the largest retail store in the United States, and as far as they knew, the world. So they came up with call letters, WLS.
All right, now we know.
Now you know. So if you're ever in a bar sometime and you win some bar bet, knowing WLS, just, hey, send me a couple of bucks.
That's right. I'll cut you in. Thank you, Gary, so much for your time. This was great.
Enjoyed it.
And thank you all for listening to the Retirement Guy podcast with Gary Alden. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Gary comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Kingwood Investment Group, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Guy podcast. Click the subscription button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Kingwood Investment Group. The content has been made available for information and education purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions that you may have regarding your investment planning. Kingwood Investment Group is independent of Next Financial Group, Inc. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Next Financial Group, Inc., member FINRA/SIPC.